It is said that this is a true story. In 2001, the United States deployed the Washington nuclear-powered aircraft carrier fleet, which included several Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and nuclear-powered submarines, to South Korea for a joint maritime military exercise with South Korea. To express its protest and alarm over the US-South Korea military exercise, Russia decided to send the fast destroyer from the Pacific Fleet to the exercise area for monitoring. But no one expected that shortly after the fast set sail, its engine malfunctioned, and smoke quickly started coming out of the destroyer's chimney. Seeing this, the captain immediately ordered the ship to stop for on-site repairs. Although the Fast was a product of the Cold War era with strong fire support capabilities, especially with the 4-mounted MOSFET supersonic cruise missiles, these missiles have full-range supersonic and terminal maneuvering capabilities and were once called carrier killers. However, as the warship has been in service for a long time, problems have gradually increased. Moreover, the chief engineer was quite aware of the approximate location of the malfunction, so he quickly distributed the repair devices to his subordinates and taught them how to fix the issues once they were found. After speaking, he was the first to enter the malfunction area, crawling slowly into the pipe despite the intense heat to find the steam leak. He could only use his hands to feel for it, but the temperature was so high that he couldn't hold on for long and was pulled out by the team members behind him. Seeing his scalded hands, the backup personnel were already trembling with fear. However, Kidenzabov next to him did not appear scared and even volunteered to go in early. Hearing this request, the chief engineer was also very surprised. He did not expect Kidenzabov as a new recruit to have such courage. Time was tight, so he had no time to think about anything else and immediately let Kidenzabov change into his gear and go in. However, when Kidenzabov entered, he faced the same urgency. The difference was that under the scorching heat, he couldn't open his eyes and could only use his hands to feel which part had the problem. Unexpectedly, he really found it. He immediately used the copper nails given to them by the chief engineer to aim at the exhaust pipe, while the chief engineer notified others to close the steam valve. This way, Kidenzabov could directly use a hammer to drive the copper nails in. Soon, he successfully blocked the exhaust port and crawled out. Seeing him still tightly holding the hammer with both hands, everyone admired his bravery. After handing the hammer to the chief engineer, he finally relaxed completely. After that, the fast destroyer resumed its voyage. Their nightmare quietly began at this moment. After the fast destroyer had been sailing for a while, it started a mid-sea refueling operation, which would take several hours. The crew on board took this time to rotate shifts and rest. However, the crew member in charge of the refueling fell asleep at this time. When he woke up, he found that the fuel had already exceeded the warning line. He immediately dropped the chain and ran to the control room, shouting to shut off the fuel valve along the way. By the time they notified the supply ship, fuel was already gushing out in the engine room. Out of the engine room. At that moment, Kidenzabov was washing up in the area. Before he could react, the alarm sounded. Due to the thick smoke, the crew did not notice him and closed the hatch. Kidenzabov intended to head toward the upper hatch, but upon turning around, he saw that the fire had already engulfed the area in front of him. Facing the raging flames, to prevent his imagination from becoming reality, Kidenzabov charged into the flames and began frantically closing the fuel pipeline valves. Meanwhile, the other crew members had already began evacuating the cabin through all the doors. Kidenzabov was still inside the cabin, completely unaware that the fire had already engulfed his entire body. The intense burning sensation did not deter him. He continued to struggle to turn the valves. He immediately asked the crew chief, but the crew chief said he hadn't noticed either. It wasn't until they heard a trembling sound behind them that they saw Kidenzabov. His entire body severely burned. The sight before him left Captain Lun speechless. Kidenzabov stated that he had already closed the fuel valve. Upon hearing this, Captain Lun immediately ordered the activation of the fire suppression system in the engine compartment. Soon after, the fire was quickly extinguished. However, Kidenzabov, severely burned all over his body, was unable to be assisted and could only stand there. He relied on his immense willpower. He endured intense pain until rescue personnel arrived, at which point he collapsed. It was precisely because of his refusal to give up that a disaster was ultimately averted, and the fast-moving destroyer was able to arrive at its target waters on schedule.